So I'm going to do all the introduction stuff on my
Okay.
own, gauging, taking from your website and all that. But we might as well just dig right in if you're up for it.
Perfect. All for it.
Well, why don't we start by talking about what a typical day is like for you? What is Masters of Self University, and how does that play into what your day-to-day life is like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's start
Right from the
big.
get-go. Light and breezy.
Right. So Masters of Self University is a mystical institution of higher learning, and it's based on spiritual psychology. It's based on the fact that we are both a spirit, a soul, having a human experience, because we're both. And a lot of times we learn that, we grow up thinking we're just this human, this person. And then sometimes we start to spiritually awaken, some people, and then we go very woo-woo and say that we're this soul and we're infinite beings and we're all of these things. We are, but we're also still human. We are both.
Yeah.
This is all of the teachings here. The transformational healing that occurs from the place and space of integration of spirit and human self, and everybody is both. So that's what it's based on. That's the foundation of Masters of Self University, of the mystical teachings. Mystical teachings never exclude the fact that we are human.
Nice.
And so a day in the life would be teaching a lot of these classes and programs and coaching programs. And also the biggest thing, which is the most exciting thing for me right now, is the Mystical Life Coach Certification Program. Nice. So it's it's certifying coaches to do this work where we no longer deny our spirit self by going only traditional psychology. And we no longer deny traditional psychology by going way too spiritual woo-woo. Because here's the truth in that. When you deny half of what you are, you'll never fully heal.
Right. Exactly.
Never fully heal. And transformational healing means you have to understand both, because we're both.
Did you come from a background, was your home life growing up of that mindset? I mean, when I think about my mom, obviously she was a pivotal person in my growth, my spiritual growth. Did you have a similar upbringing, or how did you come to the belief or the understanding that soul and psychology need to coexist?
I guess it was learning the hard way, learning the hard way from a very unhealthy, dysfunctional, abusive childhood. I had a very abusive, mentally ill, bipolar stepfather. And my first shift into spiritual awakening was actually at 13 years old.
Wow.
When I looked up at him and he was scanning my report card, and when his eyes landed on the A-, which to him is an F, right before he unleashed his rage upon me for that A- that I was so stupid, to get, right as he started to unleash it on me, I just sort of had this out of body experience. And I looked up at him and was like, oh my God, this has nothing to do with me. Stop taking his abusiveness so personally.
Nice.
Because it has nothing to do with me. These are his programs, his woundedness projected onto me. And so that led me to the vow that I made to myself when I left for college years later. This is exactly what I said. There is no way I am not fucked up from all of that. There's just no way. There's no way. And I said that to myself at 18 years old, and I made a vow I was going to get the education. I was never going to stop learning to see how I was messed up in some way. I never want to repeat those patterns that I grew up with.
Right.
And that started my journey into more, guess what, both, not just the spiritual awakening part, but the psychology, the study, specializing in mental, emotional, behavioral health. Over time, I integrated both and realized the key is to integrate both.
Exactly. What a wonderful epiphany to have at 13, I mean, obviously it left, well, it's so funny because my first instinct is to say, I'm sorry that you went through that. But my gut says, no, I'm not going to apologize because it was meant to be. You created this to bring you to the path that you're on. So,
yes.
So
thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because I love that you just said that. I appreciate it so much, because it's not for me that I went through that. It led me to do the work that I do today. And I am raising the level of consciousness in humanity because of those experiences.
Exactly.
And that's why we have them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we create them on some level, whether we
Yes.
want to believe that or not.
Yes.
I think many people are like, oh my God, why would I create a situation where I've got a bipolar abusive stepfather? I'm like, for the exact reason we're talking about. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly. Your soul chose it. My soul chose that prior to coming here. Because
Exactly.
let me say this, what people don't often realize, if you have everything all cushy, lovey, supportive, tribe bullshit, like, I'm sorry, where's the motivation to grow and learn? You're like, no, this is great. What I'm doing is wonderful because life is easy. I'm in
Right.
flow. There's no challenge. There's no pain. There's no suffering. Those are the things that challenge you to go in a different direction, to grow and to learn something that you don't understand in this moment.
Exactly. Now, so you obviously went to college to talk to, did you get a degree in psychology? It was your field of study psychology when you went to school?
Not in undergrad. I actually, my master's degree was in occupational therapy, where I went on to
Nice.
specialize in mental, emotional, and behavioral health.
Nice, nice.
So,
So that's a very traditional path. How did you foster your growth from a spiritual level or from a soul level?
good
There's no
question.
school for that. Well, until
Yeah,
now, of course.
until now. There is now. Masters of Self University, there really is now.
I love that.
um, yeah, so, and it's why I created it. That's one of the reasons why I created it, because we don't have this education. We don't have the mystical education growing
Right.
up, but I continue to go through my own spiritual awakening and growth over time. And one of the things that really nudged me in the direction to incorporate that so heavily, kind of as a healer, the psychic that I am, I would work with patients and I wanted to understand more deeply their programs and why they prevented themselves from healing, or why you would see a miracle in front of you. They would be up and walking when they hadn't for months. And then a week or two later, suddenly they weren't walking again. So I got really curious.
I like
And I did,
curiosity is a good thing.
it is a beautiful thing. It's a childlike curiosity and never judgment, just a curiosity. Why are these people not healing? Why do they keep recreating the conditions that cause them suffering when nobody, we don't want to suffer, and yet we're the ones that cause it. But why? How is that? Why is that? And that led me on the again, incorporating both the awakening spiritual part, elevating, raising my level of consciousness in order to gain those answers, and also the traditional research in mental health and emotional health and behavioral health. And it led me to find the answers. I was like, I found the answers, and now I can guide people through the deepest level of transformational healing that exists, that we have access to in this lifetime. And that's what led me there, were my patients.
Right. One of the things I find, and I'm sure that you might be the same way, is when I find one answer, I get seven more questions.
Oh, only 7? I have like 1,000. I'm like, oh no, I'm
It
never
was a
gonna
light
find
day.
the answers. It was a light day.
Uh,
Yeah, it's beautiful. And that leads you to more understanding, more wisdom gained, more growth. That's wonderful.
I think my mom used to paraphrase Socrates all the time, and maybe it was Socrates, saying that the wisest man is the person who knows nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. I always tell people, until you're willing to admit you know nothing, only then can you open yourself up to the wisdom of everything.
And I love knowing nothing.
Me too. I don't pretend to know a thing. I don't pretend to know a thing, but wisdom will come through because I'm open enough, knowing my small human pea brain doesn't know anything,
Exactly.
because it
Now,
doesn't. Mm-mm.
now, was there ever a time when you did think you needed to know everything? I mean, I certainly remember a time when I was in the corporate world and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, don't let them know that you don't know what the F you're talking about. Just nod, just like, and now I'm just like, oh no, I don't know
I don't
anything
know.
about the world. And it's wonderful because everything is new and everything is exciting.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. Those were some of my inner child wounds and my pain programs of when I was young. Some of the abuse was like, I was never good enough, no matter what I did, whether
Right.
I got MVP, straight A, it didn't matter how good I was. It was never good enough. Being one of the best in the country at something wasn't good enough. Do that 4 years in a row and then I'll be impressed. That was always the answer for
Yeah.
me. So I learned part of my woundedness and my programs that I had to heal were that I was never good enough and I had to do better and I had to strive for perfection. Kind of had to find all the answers. And that's where a lot of my education, I studied so hard. I specialized in so many things. And it was great. I got the education,
Right.
but then I realized that healing part, that mystical part, that I was doing it for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And so I had to heal that within myself, and continuing education and growth is always my number one, but I don't do it for the wrong reasons anymore.
Right.
I don't do it to get other people's validation and approval so they think I'm okay. I don't care what anybody thinks of
Right.
me. I love myself.
Exactly.
Mhm.
It's interesting to hear you say that you got the education but missed out on the learning.
Yeah, that's it. It's beautiful. You miss out on healing your wounds when you think knowledge and intellectualization is the only way to go.
I have epiphanies in my meditation. We'll talk about your meditation practice in a while as well. But when I have epiphanies in my meditations that just transcend my ability to even comprehend what's going on some level, I'm told in my meditations, I'm like, dude, it's just a primer. You're not supposed to get it yet. We're just kind of giving you a spoiler. It's coming. And then there are other times where I'm just like, wow. So for 57 years, I've been thinking that this was this, and it's not even close.
Exactly. Exactly. And you'll always receive that in time when you're open to receiving it. It's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Absolutely. Now, when you when you teach clients,
Mhm.
do you ever have challenges with people that are coming from a way spiritual viewpoint where they're like, yeah, psychology is psychology, and other people are like, yeah, psychology is spirit? Like, how do you get to those people that are more heavily leaning one way or the other?
Oh, great question. So the beauty is in the program itself. That's part of what I've worked so hard to figure out in my entire life's work are the coaching programs that I offer, is to solve that problem. Because I was like, how do we deal with this? They think over here is the only way to go. They think over here is the only way to go. It's part of what I resolved over time. I had to do a lot of, again, combination of through meditation, through trial and error, through more study on people's psyche and what programs were running within them that prevented them from being open to something different. So that's part of the work. So the work, it's integrated and infused every single step of the way to bring people at a deeper place of realization every single week. Every
Nice.
single week they do the work, and it's a curriculum that is bite-sized pieces. They are easy to chew and
Just
swallow.
grows.
And it grows over time. So it's a process. It's not just, hey, you have to suddenly believe in this. It'll never work.
Right.
It'll never work that way. But they have their own realizations and their own epiphanies when you're guided in a certain way to allow them to happen. And that's
Right.
what the programs are.
And I would imagine that's the only way it could be successful, is if people have those epiphanies on their own.
Exactly.
Nothing would ever be successful if you say, well, you need to think this way. It's like,
Exactly.
oh yeah, that's not going to work.
No way. Resistance immediately, the programs of resistance, or prove it or convince me.
Right. And it's interesting how, and it's obviously working, how you're able to meld those two, but it seems so commonplace for it to happen, meaning that my mom used to say that true science will never contradict true religion or true
Exactly.
spirituality.
Yes.
So to your point, you're taking a scientific model and proving spirituality, or these concepts of spirituality. So it's
Yes.
those little bite-sized pieces are like very digestible, for want of a better word, and they just hit each brain, the
Yes.
logical and the spiritual on the same level. So it's awesome.
Absolutely. And it drops people and connects them to their heart center. It connects them to the center of their heart chakra, their heart space, because that is where you connect to your higher soul. And that's where your wisdom and guidance can flow through. So what happens over time is you become more and more and more connected to heart centeredness. And it allows you to open up to wisdom flowing through versus your crazy mind and the mental programs running that are always going to be there. And it's I think a lot of people learn and make the mistake in learning meditation is supposed to be to like quiet the mind. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah,
That's why a lot of
exactly.
people give up meditating. Get this crazy thing up here to be
Yeah, good
quiet.
luck with that.
Never gonna happen. That is never gonna happen. But
Right.
the beauty and the work in this, especially with learning how deep we go in the mystical life coach certification program, the beauty in this work is it organically takes you so deep to bypass the mind and mental programs that over time, everything in the mind truly slows down and
Mm,
it kind of takes a seat in the back where it belongs.
I like that. That's one of the things I talk about with the gifts of meditation is we have this inner dialogue that says, you're crap, you're not enough, why aren't
Right.
you like your sister? Why aren't you like your brother? You're never going
Yeah.
to have enough. And then our higher voice is, the voice of our higher self is a little quieter saying, you got
Yes.
this, you're all set. With meditation, the loud inner dialogue slowly shifts and your higher voice says, no, you're okay. This one's just talking crap.
Yes, that is exactly. And the higher voice, your higher soul that speaks to you, a lot of people don't realize, I think it's very subtle. It's a whisper. It's
Mhm.
quiet.
Exactly.
It's very gentle. It's not this loud knock on the door yelling at you. It's very
Because it doesn't have to
gentle.
be.
Doesn't have to be.
The louder people yell, the more unsure they are of what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in order to hear that, it's not about quieting the mind, so to speak, although language is limiting. Sometimes we put it that way.
Right.
But it's not literally about trying to quiet the mind. You will lose that battle. It's
Right.
about learning what it means to connect more deeply into your heart center, where your focus is no longer on your mind. Your focus is on your heart. That's where you hear the whispers, the wisdom.
Do you ever have challenges with your students having an epiphany or receiving wisdom or connecting to their heart space where it scares them because they're so unaccustomed to that? Or does your process make it so that it's like, okay, this is going to happen? And you're like, okay, I'm ready. And then when it happens, they're like, okay, cool. As opposed to like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, I think we went crazy.
Yeah. I used to very early on in the work. I was so used to being spoken to all the time since I was very young and a lot of psychic abilities growing up. I was used to it. I didn't realize 20 years ago that other people would freak them out. And so I had to learn, and again, that's the process of the work. And you already described it so beautifully. It's because it's done in little pieces. Now what happens, people wake up to their wisdom and go, oh my God, I'm intuitive too. Yeah, you are. And they get so excited and they start to feel this sense of peace and freedom
Right.
because like, oh my God, I can have the wisdom too. Yeah, that's what this work is. It's teaching you, self-actualization, how to be guided to yourself, but what the true self is, not the mind or, making decisions based on what you think is right. Oh, you'll screw it up at least half the time. Don't do that. Follow your wisdom, even if you don't understand it. It never,
Right.
it never steers you wrong.
I'd say obviously that's a huge benefit of my meditation practices as well. It's just like just to have, and many people would say like, how could you have blind faith in something that you can't quantify? I'm like, well, I can quantify it, but not by your standards.
Yeah. Right. And that's where mind always wants to know and understand everything. And
Right.
having trust in your higher soul or trust in the universe only comes from a sense of peacefulness and presence. So if you don't have the peacefulness and the presence there, you'll never have the faith needed to
Right.
guide
Exactly.
you and to
You have to
follow
have
those
that
steps.
bedrock.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where did you learn how to meditate? Speaking, getting into your meditation practice.
I evolved a type of meditation that I do today. I
Nice.
evolved it as I was working with patients back when I was still working in the medical field before I, went out on my own and created my own business.
Right.
But with them, I was just intuitively guided on what to do with them.
How cool is that?
And yeah, it was amazing because of course, back then too, I couldn't write. I couldn't put in my medical documentation on my patients that we were meditating. That wasn't allowed.
Right.
There it might be changing now a little bit, but you certainly couldn't bill for that with insurance companies.
No.
It wasn't happening. Or energy healing that I would incorporate into my session. You can't bill for that. You can't. So I had to come up with a really moral and ethical way
Right.
to incorporate deeper healing. with
That's
my
awesome.
patients with the traditional, therapy that I was giving. So over time, what I was guided was, in order to drop them in and connect them to their heart space, which most of them, especially at the time, would have no idea what that means. And they would just shut down. There's no way you would listen to something's real new
Right,
and you're in
exactly.
pain and you need help. And so over time, I just started with breathing techniques.
Love that.
Let's breathe, because we all know with breath work, any kind of gentle breath work, it just starts to relax the body. It releases oxytocin. It does all these beautiful things. It's a form of meditation. Breath work's a form of meditation. So that's where I started. And then the process evolved over time. And I would be taught through my higher soul, now do this, now do that, now do that. And I saw these incredible levels of transformational healing take place in people when they would do this.
I
So
love
I
the
knew
fact
I
that
was on the right track.
I love the fact that you found a way to incorporate that into the medical model, because I used to counsel emotionally disturbed teenagers at a psych hospital in Somerville. And obviously, yeah, we had to do copious notes, and many times, in fact, my listeners will probably get to hear in the story, but after I left the hospital, I ran a group home for mentally challenged or emotionally challenged adults and adolescents. And there's this one guy that I was working with, and we went out for a walk one day, and he says, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I had a meeting the other day." I'm like, "Oh, cool." He's like, "I met my future self the other day." I'm like, "Oh." I'm like, "Cool. How did that go?" He's like, "Well, he told me I need to be doing more to take care of myself now, by taking my meds and by getting outside of the house more." So I said, "Oh, that sounds like really good advice." He's like, "You don't think I'm crazy?" He's like, "Do you think it was my future self?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's good advice though. So why not? Why shoot the messenger? That's great
Yeah.
advice." But when I had supervision with my boss at the time at the group home, I was talking about the session. I said, "Oh, I had this interaction with Brian," and she's like, and I told, he told me that he met his future self, and she said, "Well, I hope you told him that that wasn't possible." I said, "I didn't." I said,
Oh,
"Yeah, exactly."
oh, that hurts my heart.
It does, exactly. And well, much to our point what we were talking about earlier, it kind of led me to the point of like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here anymore. So that's when I
Mm-mm.
decided to leave. I'm like, if this is the system that I have to work with, I can't stay here.
Exactly. Oh, I'm
So
so glad that you left. It's
yeah.
so interesting that you worked with the diagnosis of emotionally disturbed, because I did too. I worked with emotionally disturbed children up to the age of about 14, 15 years old.
Oh,
And
that's
that's
awesome.
where, yeah, and I was doing behavioral therapy at that time. And it was very similar experiences, that no matter what, if they were hearing voices, then that was a sign that they were also schizophrenic. And several, kids in the school that I worked in, they had a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And it doesn't mean that the diagnosis was necessarily wrong, except that I had one kiddo, for example, 100% they had that diagnosis down, that poor kid.
Right.
But there were other ones that they were putting notes and signs of schizo, and it was not. They were their higher soul was trying to guide them, and there's no acknowledgement of that.
Right.
There was
Right.
just no acknowledgement of it. So again, you have to be very careful and delicate with how you word things and teach things. But I knew then, like, I need to get to a place where when my higher soul says I'm ready, I'm going out on my own.
Right.
And I need to be able to teach and heal at a much deeper level where transformation can actually occur and people are validated and acknowledged for being intuitive and getting in touch with their higher selves. That's what's supposed to be guiding us through life.
Exactly, and pulling that curtain aside.
Yes.
I love that you did the work that you did for that very same reason I did, to understand that there's something more. And
Yes.
yes, there obviously is. There are people who are schizophrenic, who are
Yep.
sociopathic.
Yep.
But to your point, I think a lot of times we're like, don't understand it. Let's just throw them in there. Let's just throw them in there.
Exactly.
They've got the symptoms. It looks like it, so let's just say it is. Like,
Exactly.
so.
And we do so much more harm than good.
Indeed, indeed. So
So
that's
much
why
more
I'm very
harm than
excited
good.
for the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
So when you think about, I know what an HSP is. That's only because I've been following you and understanding. But explain to my listeners what an HSP is.
Sure. Highly sensitive person. 20% of the population in humans and animals are highly sensitive beings. Highly sensitive is a person's nervous system, their sensory system processes stimulation, external stimuli in their environment very intensely. It's the ability to take every single thing in around you that most people ignore and focus and hone in on like one thing or two things.
Mhm.
When they're having a conversation, a podcast, listening to something, whereas a highly sensitive person takes everything in their environment in at one time and processes very deeply. So this can get very overstimulating. People talk about misdiagnoses.
Right. Exactly. That's what led me to thinking about this.
Yeah, talk about misdiagnosed a lot of the time, especially in children. Or it's so misunderstood that a lot of times in children, especially, it's often they're categorized as being like shy or timid. No, because they won't enter into an arena, maybe playing soccer for the first time.
Right.
They joined, your parents joined you on a soccer team, for example, and they don't want to go out on the field. Oh, they're shy, they're timid. No, they're not. They're highly sensitive. What does that mean? It means intuitively they know to kind of scan the entire scene for a while. Why? Because there was a major impact on their sensory system that can take days to recover from.
Right.
And they intuitively just know that. So they scan so they can see what is going to be the harshest thing that they're going to have to energetically deal with, and they'll stay away from that. Or if this is an okay scenario, it's not going to overstimulate me too much, I will then jump right in, but jump right in after 10 minutes of observing. That's what we need to understand about it. Doesn't mean the person is shy or timid. It's anybody watches anything I do, you will never, and you shut that girl's mouth. Shut her up. She has no problem speaking up, speaking out.
Right.
And I am extraordinarily sensitive. I will never be the front in the classroom. I'm in the back. Why? Because if a lot of stuff is going on with people's energies, I need to move away so
Right.
that it doesn't drain me for 2 days later. So that's to give a little bit of an understanding.
Now, to that point, so you said, given that example of the kid on the soccer field, they have an intuitive sense of being different in a wonderful way.
Mhm.
Did you have that same intuitive sense when you understood that you were an HSP, or did you go through a kind of a like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, why is everything hitting me? Or were you able to kind of just tune in? Were you at a point in your evolution, your spiritual evolution, where you said, I know exactly what's going on and I'm good?
I know exactly what's going on. I'm not good. I'm not good is where I
Right.
was as a child because I didn't understand it. We didn't
Right.
have the clinical term highly sensitive person until 1995. So as a child, I was extraordinarily sensitive, always called sensitive, too sensitive, oversensitive. Um, and yet I always saw with my psychic gifts, it's part of what I was able to do for people, see the truth. No, 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 this is going to happen. And I would have premonitions and tell people, if you do that, you're going to get really hurt. You're crazy. And then I could see, I could kind of interpret the energy and feel the energy of what was going to happen. And it would make me cry. It would drain me. I would be fatigued. And then they would get hurt. How did you know that? So I always knew, I always had the awareness there. I always understood my sensitivities were telling me things about people and circumstances that they couldn't see themselves. But I also it took me so many years. I hated my sensitivities because like no one's like you and you feel very alone and isolated. You don't understand yourself. People in the world don't understand you. They tell you to suck it up, toughen up, get a thicker skin. That's not possible. This isn't some diagnosis. It's not a condition. It's the way your nervous system processes things.
Right.
And it is a beautiful gift to other people around you when you learn how to use the gift.
Right. And that, I mean, therein lies the rub. That's a huge part, I would imagine, because to your point, what led us to this road is just like people that are highly sensitive that don't know that case and they're like anxious all the time
Yes.
or and like you said, shy, and like people are just like, come on, what's wrong with you?
Right,
When absolutely
right.
nothing is wrong.
Exactly. Nothing is wrong. Or, they'll get these mental diagnoses a lot of times too. That's the sad part. Oh, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have this. No, you're picking up on everybody else's stuff when you're around them.
Right.
And you think it's you. But if you learn about the highly sensitive person and you get the right coach or expert, a lot of people get sent to traditional therapy, for example, who are not trained in this at all.
Right.
And so it ends up having long-term, very negative effects or misdiagnoses that you have anxiety. A person might not have anxiety ever and yet may feel anxiety a lot. Why? A lot of people in the world have anxiety. And when you're highly sensitive, you can feel other people's stuff. That's part of what you have the ability to do.
What an excuse me, what an amazing epiphany, because I obviously know, well, maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but I know when I'm coming in contact with somebody, I'm like, oh, the energy that they're putting out is like anxious or whatever. So I know I'm like, and I'm not finger pointing, obviously, but I'm like, this isn't
Yeah.
me. This is
Yes.
them. I'm sensing that from them. But I would imagine how absolutely horrible would it be if you didn't know that? If like
It's
you come in contact with somebody who is incredibly anxious and then you become anxious and you go to a doctor saying, I'm anxious all the time because you're hanging out with anxious people. It's not you.
yes.
You're just picking
Yes.
up the vibe of everybody else. I'm like,
Yes.
no, that must be a, and to your point, thankfully, because of people like you, there's a different avenue as opposed to going to a therapist and say, okay, you're anxious all the time. Let's treat that. I'm like, oh boy.
Exactly. Because then it doesn't work. And a lot of children who are highly sensitive are picking up on their parents' anxiety,
Mm,
which is why they're quote unquote always anxious. And it's not their own anxiety.
right.
The sad thing is the anxiety can develop also within yourself over time because you feel like you don't have any control over your emotions and what's happening in your body. That's the sad part. And
Right.
when you go to traditional therapy, for example, their answer is pharmaceuticals and medicating, and they try to numb down what you're feeling,
Right.
which never actually works. And you wonder why the anxiety doesn't go away, because you as an empathic person or a highly sensitive person are always going to feel everybody's stuff. It's what do I do with it now that I understand my gifts? Because
Right.
there's definitely ways to manage and not have to live through everybody's garbage, but you have to learn that. There's techniques and tools. That's why I coach it. That's why I offer it, because we need beautiful thing about highly sensitive people and their gifts. We need their gifts on this planet.
Oh, absolutely.
It's here to help heal the planet and other people on the planet, but not if they're bogged down through, medication and misdiagnoses.
Right. I talk about this. I used to be a personal trainer, and one of the things I talked about was that if we want to have a fuller life, we need to be able to focus on it. And if we wake up every morning in pain, then our focus is going to be on the pain. So I want to help people to become more healthy, and so that they could be free to focus on something bigger. And obviously, that
Yeah.
led to me to expanding what better meant. But yeah, so anytime that we're in a lot of pain, whether it be mental or physical, we can't really bring all that we are to the world. We're so focused
Exactly.
on doing that. So when we clear all that away with the work that
Yes.
you do, with the work I do, then we open up a world where people are flourishing and thriving, and the whole world is benefiting from all that.
Absolutely. Beautifully said.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Now, getting along that same topic, and it's funny because I was about to say I want to segue into shadow work and talking
Mhm.
about what that is. Why don't I just go with your interpretation? What is shadow work to you?
Yeah, so shadow work, it's the biggest thing that I offer as a coach, and the biggest thing we do in the Mystical Life Coach Certification Program is shadow work. You don't do shadow work, you're not healing anything. Let me just make that very clear. It's black
Right.
and white. There's no ifs, ands, buts about that. Everybody has a shadow self, and your shadow self is made up of 4 quadrants. Your shadow self are your mental programs, your emotional programs, your behavioral programs, and your inner child wounds. Those are the things that create blocks, keep you stuck, keep you repeating and reenacting your childhood over and over and over again, the stuff that's unhealed, the patterns from your childhood or from your traumas or unpleasant experiences. This is the part of you that shows up in the world less than their divine self. And that needs to be, healed fully so that you can integrate with your soul and come into wholeness and be the most magnificent version of you that you can be. So when you realize that, oh my gosh, my shadow, so it's just programs running, that's not the truth of who I am. They're just programs. Like everybody has wounds, but
Right.
why not heal them? Let's
Right.
just heal them so they don't exist anymore. We don't have to live with wounds. That's what coping strategies are for. Why would you settle for that? Let's just heal them completely so you have no wounds. So that's part of shadow work, is addressing those aspects of us that are wounded or that we are so ashamed of and we don't want to admit is part of who we are.
Uh, it is.
Instead, like, bring it to the light.
That's exactly one of the reasons why we're human. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
To experience that, it's like you are light and love and divinity, and you're just in a different shape, in a
Yep.
different form. So
Yep.
whatever's going on in that form, it doesn't impact the fact that the essence of all that you are is light and love. So
Exactly. And we get trapped in our shadow selves when we're unwilling to see and heal it.
right,
The more we suppress it, the more harm we cause other people and ourselves. And that's why it's so critical that there is no such thing as transformational healing taking place without shadow work. You cannot heal what you deny. You cannot heal what you're not willing to see. It
right,
just keeps showing up over and over again. And how do you know it's showing up? Look at your life circumstances, look at your failed relationships, look at the conflicts in your relationships, look at your own emotional pain and suffering. Just look at what's happening in your life. What are you struggling with? What are you suffering with? And when those are not yet healed, it doesn't mean shame on you. It just means you have work to do. Let's do the work to bring this to the light so that we can love this and heal this. And it's no
right,
longer going to affect you. You no longer have triggers. There's no such thing as triggers anymore. You're not triggered anymore when you do this work.
right, exactly. I link it to when I'm teaching meditation, and when people say, "Well, when I have thoughts, what do I do? Do I push them aside?" I'm like, "Whoa, no, 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 not at all, not at all.
Not
You
at all.
acknowledge them, because any thought that you try and push away, the thought just says, 'Oh yeah, you think you're going to push me away? I'm coming back stronger.'"
Stronger. Exactly. I
So
am
you just say,
coming back stronger.
right, exactly. So just acknowledge it. Cool. I acknowledge I'm having a thought. I'm going to let it pass, and I'll redirect myself to my breath, my mantra, whatever is going to be beneficial for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I joke with a lot of my clients. I'll say, if you really pay attention to your mental programs and you have children, how many times did you imagine choking your child out today? Oh, I would never. Shut up.
You
Shut.
did
Yes,
too.
you did. You did too. And this is part of the work, is seeing that those crazy thoughts actually run through our head like a flash,
Right,
but seeing it slows it down. And
right.
over time, those things don't even occur anymore with this work, because you're willing to see it instead of deny. I would never think that about my kid. You're not a parent and didn't imagine drowning your child. There's no such thing. Give me a break.
I'm
You
no parent, but I know
absolutely.
that that is absolutely the case with a ton of them. I'm sure my mom, absolutely. There are
Yes.
times my mom went screaming out of the house, "I can't take this anymore."
Totally. Like, where do I put him back? How do I,
Yeah, exactly,
and
exactly.
and that's the human self. That's the human side of us that we need
Right,
to learn to love instead of be ashamed of, because the more you love it, the less it has a need to be there. That's the ironic thing. The more you see it, and okay, what are my mental programs? I got triggered. No, I totally wanted to drown my child. My hands were on its throat, and that's what I saw in my head for a split second.
right,
Write that down. Oh, I love that. You
right.
love that? Yeah,
Like, you're
I
sick.
love that. Like, let it come up to the light, because the
Right,
more you let it come up and you see it and you love it, instead of shame it or say, oh dear, oh, I'm a horrible person or parent. No, you're not. Let the thoughts are not who you are. Let the thoughts come into your light, and over time they absolutely dissolve, and they don't even come up like that anymore. They don't
right.
exist anymore over time. Why? Because you're learning how to be nothing but light instead of ashamed.
And what a great example or analogy, because I mean, think about it. We're talking about this, and I'm sure there are people out there. I'm like, oh my God, she's thinking about throttling her kid. I'm like society tells us that it's wrong. I mean, it would be wrong, obviously,
Of course.
but even to talk about it would be wrong. You're like, you
Right.
can't have that thought. That's a bad thought. And if
That's a
you're having
bad
that thought,
thought.
you're a bad person. Like,
Exactly.
no, 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 no.
Judgment programs, shaming programs, and we wonder why we have half of humanity or more has anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
That you can't even think a crazy thought that runs through your head, and you have to, oh my God, I'm a bad person. No, Let the thought come up and bring it to the light and love it.
It's like, there it is.
There
Doesn't
it
have any
is.
power now.
Like, look at that crazy thought. I
Oh,
always
wow, that's
tell
a weird
people,
thought. Next.
exactly, like, wow, look at what just came through my head. I always tell people the sooner you can embrace the fact that your mind is batshit crazy, the faster and more efficient you're going to be at healing yourself, because your mind is nuts. Just lunatic nuts is the mind. You are not your mind.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I consider myself one of the calmest, most rational people I know. But every now and then I'll have a thought. I'm like, holy crap, where did that
What
come
was
from?
that? Exactly.
And then it's just like, it's like the most, I don't embrace it. I don't be like, oh my God, dude, you are sick. What's going on? It's just like, wow, that was weird. Huh.
That was weird. That was weird. What was that?
Exactly.
And
Not
then
shaming
just
myself.
no, and that's beautiful that you have the power to do that. And I want to bring back full circle just for a second. Highly sensitive people and people with psychic gifts, whether they realize they have them or not, a lot of times those thoughts are start flowing through because they're able to interpret the thoughts of other people around them. That's the other thing.
Oh, wow.
So the more the less we understand about that, and the more we shame those thoughts. Are you kidding me? Any quote unquote, let's just call them negative thoughts, any negative thoughts that are flowing through the mind need the higher vibrational frequency of love. They need love. They need the light. So if you shame them, all you're doing is adding more darkness. You're
Pushing
not
it down, creating
yes,
that denseness.
yep, you're making it worse because you're adding more darkness. Shame, blame, pointing fingers, judgment, that's darkness. That's
So
aspect of
heavy.
shadow. So heavy. And if we realize instead that, the thoughts that are coming through me or anybody else, oh, I can connect to my heart space, I can grow my light, and I can love those thoughts. Then when you're a sensitive person, an empath, certain psychic gifts, you're getting those thoughts from the people around you. What you're doing is you're adding light. Everything is energy. Your thoughts are energy. So
Right.
you're adding the energy of love to the room versus darkness, shame, embarrassment. Stop doing that. Let's
Right.
add love instead. The higher frequency, and this is science, this is the mystical, but also scientific part of this, is all of the energy that is lower energy entrains to the highest energy in the room. So if all you're doing is adding judgment and negativity, you're adding heavier, dense negativity, darkness to the room. But in the room that you're in, or the environment you're in, if you're adding light by no judgment and you're just loving those crazy thoughts, it actually transforms the energy into a higher vibrational frequency. No different than having a pot of boiling water on the stove and you dump a bunch of ice in it. What happens to the ice? It first has to melt and then it evaporates. It's
Right.
just a transformation of energy. We're transforming the energy into a more elevated, lighter, beautiful state in our environment just by loving our crazy thoughts.
What a great analogy, because I think we all can think about times when we've been in a room where the energy was just heavy and dark,
Yes.
and somebody changes it with love and with light and with, whether it be laughter, whether it be, and then it just changes, and it's almost palpable, and maybe it's just palpable to people like you and I who have that gift of awareness.
Yeah.
But I think even on some level people recognize that.
Yep. I totally agree. Because everybody has that experience of, oh my God, here comes Danny Downer. And I always feel like crap after talking to Danny. Oh, he's so negative. That's because the energy. And when you don't have the ability to go in, connect to your light, raise your frequency and add love to this energy, then that other negative energy that Danny Downer's offering is going to overtake, and it's going to change the energy in the room, including inside of yourself.
Right, exactly. One of the things I talk about ad nauseum, maybe my listeners will say, is putting up what I call my psychic shields. So if somebody's coming towards me and I sense their energy is a little less than light, then in my mind's eye, I just imagine myself in like an invisible bubble that I'm in, and it's like, so whatever they're doing, it's like, oh, okay, that's not making its way to me. I'm like, and to be honest, that's how I best interact with those people. I will try and raise their energy, and if it's not in their path, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it my best shot. But if it's not, I'm like, no worries, I'm not going to own their stuff. But if I can transform it, I will. And if I can't, I'm not going to let it impact me. I'll just send them light and love and be on their way.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. That's responsible. And it's not being a victim of, hey, their programs, their energy is their responsibility.
Right.
But if I am more powerful in my light, when they come near me, the light that I create from the inside out will transform the energy that they're omitting.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't transform them at all, that's not my job to transform them.
Right.
But if it doesn't have an effect, that's okay. That's their programs, their problem, their woundedness, not mine. I don't take that
Right.
on.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I mean, that's at the very core of what you and I do, is
Yes,
healing the world and making the
yes,
world better.
yes,
So whenever we can, we do. But if we can't, we realize that that's not how it's supposed to be in this
yes,
moment.
yes, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Awesome. 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 I'm trying to think if there's anything we didn't go over. We're coming up on an hour, which we went on a ton of things. What are some of the things you're working on right now? Are there any things, books or the certification program that you are really excited about that you want to share with listeners?
Sure. So the most exciting thing is the Mystical Life Coach Certification Program. And if anybody wants to find out more about it, you can go to Masters of Self University. I strongly encourage you. We need more light warriors on this planet to do this work.
Right.
So I am sending out the invitation for all of you who feel a little called to find out more. Go to mastersofselfuniversity.com and check out the Mystical Life Coach Certification Program. I am writing a book currently.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
I am so excited about it. It's about the ways of oneness, living in an enlightened society and what that means and how to get there. So when that is ready to go, I'll be happy to share that with the world when it's ready.
Oh, well, I'll put that right out there now. The second that's done, I want you back here.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you. I will be back.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. I look forward to that as well. One of the things I want to talk about, and obviously my listeners won't, well, actually my Patreon listeners will be able to, the space that you're in right now, the room that you're in, the
Mhm.
energy in that room is just so palpably calm and peaceful and light emitting. So I just want to make note of that.
Oh, thank you for noticing. I appreciate you expressing that. Thank you.
I would imagine that you decorated that space yourself.
Yes, yes, I did. I transformed this room for this work, the work that I do with others. Yeah.
Right. So, so what did the room look like before you got there? Was it? I'm sure it wasn't a mess, but
Oh, it was a mess.
I wasn't.
It was a mess. Yes, it was a mess. I wish I could flash pictures up right now and show you. It was an absolute destructive mess. My partner and I bought a house 2 years ago, and it was a total remodel. And this was one of the first rooms the kitchen was the first space, but this room was next because I wanted to transform the space and incorporate and integrate all of the energies that would be really, enjoyable, healing, calming to anybody who, does this work with me or is interested in this work. So I took great care energetically with the room.
Nice. Well, as we were talking, I just took a screenshot, so I will actually put it in the show notes so I can, so that my listeners aren't be like, "Oh, damn."
What room are they talking about?
Oh my God, this is
Yeah.
what audio stinks. This is where audio stinks. Now, are you a big follower? Do you have many social media accounts that people can follow, or would you recommend that your website be the best place to get in touch with you and keep in touch with all the things you're doing?
I would go to the website first, Masters of Self University. You can go to Rachel Fiori, my Facebook business page, my Instagram, Rachel_Fiori. So you can certainly go to those and follow those. YouTube, you can follow me on YouTube, and Rachel Fiori for all of those. So you can always visit me anywhere you want to. You can find me out there. But definitely
You're meant to
Masters of
find you,
Self.
you will.
Yes, if you're meant to find me, you will find me. But definitely Masters of Self University is where I encourage you to go because there's a lot of resources there for people. If you want free teachings and videos and things like that, you can go to the other social media sites as well as the website, or you could become a member of the website. I know people ask me this a lot, so I want to throw this out there. A simple monthly membership, you can attend live classes every month, and then you get the video replays of all the classes ever taught. So if people want to give a membership a try, I definitely encourage you to give that a try and come get some of the teachings, the live teachings twice a month. And anything you want to learn about or dive more deeply into, you can send those to me. You'll know as a member I customize all the classes to the listeners. So whoever wants to show up or watch the replays, all the classes are customized to what you want to learn more deeply about or heal from. So just
Oh,
want to throw that
phenomenal.
out there.
Oh, that's exciting. Obviously, we'll get in touch offline so I can share all those links with listeners in the show notes.
Wonderful. Thank
So they
you.
don't miss anything.
That would be wonderful.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute joy meeting you and talking with you. And I'm sure that this is the first of many conversations that we will have.
I hope so. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to be in your presence and your space. I love what you do. Thank you for having me. It was an honor. And I
Thank
send
you.
all the love in the universe to you and to all of your listeners.
Right back at you. You go make it a great rest of the day. And like I said, we'll be talking real soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom.
Much love, my
Bye-bye.
friend. Peace.
Much love.